Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Boss Economics World, where we cut through the economic jargon, call out the government's epic mismanagement, and expose the Fed's latest circus act. I'm your host, the guy who's just as fed up as you are with the endless stream of excuses, half-truths, and policy disasters that are tanking our wallets, our jobs, and our future. Today, we're diving headfirst into the hot mess that is the U.S. economy, courtesy of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's latest masterclass in doing absolutely nothing while pretending everything's fine. Buckle up, folks, this is gonna be a wild ride. So, Jerome Powell, the Grand Maestro of monetary policy, took to the stage at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business last Friday to deliver what can only be described as a masterclass in economic procrastination. His message? Hey, the economy's in a good place, no rush to do anything, let's just wait for greater clarity. Oh, fantastic. Because nothing screams leadership like sitting on your hands while inflation eats away at our paychecks, consumer spending teeters on the edge of a cliff, and Trump's tariff tantrums threaten to turn the global economy into a dumpster fire. But don't worry, folks, Powell's got this under control. He's well positioned to wait. Translation: we have no idea what's going on, but we're hoping it magically fixes itself. Meanwhile, the latest data paints a picture of an economy that's not just stumbling, it's doing a faceplant into a pile of uncertainty, bad policy, and government mismanagement. Let's break this down, layer by layer, from the surface-level clownery to the deep, systemic failures that got us here. Powell's rose-tinted glasses must be industrial grade, because claiming the U.S. economy is in a good place is the kind of delusion that would make even the most optimistic Wall Street trader choke on their overpriced latte. Let's start with the labor market, which Powell casually described as solid and broadly in balance. Oh, really? Because the latest labor market figures, released just hours before Powell's speech, showed the U.S. economy added a measly 151,000 jobs in February, while the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.1%. Now, let's put that in context. Back in 2022, when the Fed was busy hiking rates at a breakneck pace to fight inflation, the unemployment rate was a cozy 3.5%. Fast forward to today, and we're looking at a labor market that's cooling faster than a popsicle in a blizzard. And here's the kicker, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the labor force participation rate has barely budged, hovering around 62.5%, a far cry from its pre-pandemic peak of 63.4%. Translation: millions of Americans have simply given up looking for work, and they're not even counted in that 4.1% unemployment figure. But wait, there's more. The jobs being added? A huge chunk of them are part-time or gig economy roles, not the stable, full-time jobs that actually pay the bills. According to a recent report from the Economic Policy Institute, involuntary part-time employment, people who want full-time work but can't find it, has risen by 20% since early 2023. So, while Powell's patting himself on the back for a solid labor market, regular Americans are stuck juggling 2 gig jobs just to afford their groceries. And let's not forget the elephant in the room, wage growth. Sure, the headlines love to trumpet rising wages, but when you adjust for inflation, real wages, aka what you can actually buy with your paycheck, have been flatlining for over a year. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, real average hourly earnings grew by a pathetic 0.1% in 2023. Meanwhile, the cost of eggs is up 38%, rent is up 20%, and don't even get me started on car insurance, which has skyrocketed by 26% in the past year alone, per the Consumer Price Index, CPI. So, Jerome, if this is what a good place looks like, I'd hate to see what a bad place feels like. But hey, at least the Fed's well positioned to wait, right? Now, let's talk about inflation, because this is where the Fed's incompetence really shines. Powell had the audacity to say, the path to sustainably returning inflation to our target has been bumpy, and we expect that to continue. Bumpy? Bumpy? This isn't a gravel road, Jerome, this is a full-blown economic car crash, and you're the one who drove us off the cliff. Let's rewind the tape. Back in 2021, when inflation first started rearing its ugly head, Powell and his Fed cronies were busy calling it transitory. Remember that? Oh, it's just a temporary blip, nothing to worry about, they said, as they kept interest rates at near zero and pumped trillions into the economy via quantitative easing. Fast forward to 2022, and inflation hit a 40-year high of 9.1%, according to the CPI. Whoops. So, what did the Fed do? They panicked and embarked on the most aggressive rate hiking cycle in decades, jacking up the federal funds rate from 0.25% to 5.5% in just 18 months. And sure, inflation has come down from its peak, but at what cost? The latest CPI data shows headline inflation at 3.1% as of February 2025, still well above the Fed's sacred 2% target. And core inflation, which strips out volatile food and energy prices, is stuck at 3.9%, signaling that price pressures are still deeply embedded in the economy. But here's the real kicker, the Fed's rate hikes haven't just failed to tame inflation, they've also crushed the very people they claim to be helping. Take housing, for example. Powell mentioned ongoing progress in categories like housing services, but let's check the receipts. According to the National Association of Realtors, the median home price in the U.S. is now $435,000, up 6% from last year, while mortgage rates are hovering around 7%, thanks to the Fed's rate hikes. The result? First-time homebuyers are being priced out of the market at record rates, with home ownership among under 35s falling to its lowest level since the 1980s, per Census Bureau data. And don't even get me started on rent. The CPI's Rent of Primary Residence Index is up 6.1% year-over-year, meaning tenants are getting squeezed just as hard as would-be homeowners. So, while Powell's busy celebrating progress, regular Americans are choosing between paying rent and buying groceries. Now, let's zoom out from the Fed's failures and shine a spotlight on the government's role in this economic dumpster fire. Powell delicately tiptoed around the issue, saying, it is the net effect of these policy changes that will matter for the economy. Oh, come on, Jerome, call it what it is. President Trump's economic proposals, from slapping new tariffs on China to threatening levies on Mexico and Canada, are a recipe for disaster. Let's break this down with some hard data. According to a recent study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics, Trump's proposed tariffs, up to 60% on Chinese goods and 25% on imports from Mexico and Canada, could raise U.S. consumer prices by an additional 2% annually. That's right, folks, more inflation, at a time when the Fed's already struggling to get it under control. And who pays the price? You do. From higher costs for electronics to pricier cars and groceries, these tariffs are essentially a tax on the American consumer. But it gets worse. The same study estimates that these tariffs could shave 1.5% off U.S. GDP growth over the next 2 years, while costing up to 1.2 million jobs as businesses grapple with higher input costs and retaliatory trade measures from other countries. Remember the 2018 trade war with China? Yeah, that cost U.S. farmers $27 billion in lost exports, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and forced taxpayers to foot the bill for massive farm bailouts. Here we go again. And let's not forget Trump's immigration crackdown. Stricter enforcement and mass deportations might sound tough on the campaign trail, but economically, it's a disaster. The American Immigration Council estimates that undocumented workers contribute $1.6 trillion to U.S. GDP annually, filling critical roles in industries like agriculture, construction, and hospitality. Kick them out, and you're looking at labor shortages, higher wages, which fuel inflation, and supply chain disruptions. So, while Powell's busy waiting for clarity, the government's out here swinging a wrecking ball at the economy. And guess what? The Fed's stuck in an impossible bind, slowing growth on one side, rising inflation on the other. Welcome to Stagflation, folks, courtesy of government mismanagement and Fed inaction. Here's the bottom line, folks, the U.S. economy is a house of cards, and the Fed, the government, and their endless parade of bad decisions are the gust of wind about to blow it all down. Consumer spending, which accounts for 70% of GDP, is already showing signs of cracking. Powell himself admitted that recent indicators suggested consumer spending may moderate. Gee, you think? With credit card debt hitting a record $1.14 trillion, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and savings rates plummeting to 3.1%, Americans are tapped out. Meanwhile, businesses are spooked. Surveys like the National Federation of Independent Business, NFIB, Small Business Optimism Index show confidence at its lowest level since the pandemic, with 40% of small business owners citing inflation and uncertainty as their top concerns. And let's not forget the stock market, which is riding high on AI hype but ignoring the fundamentals, like the fact that corporate earnings growth is slowing, with S&P 500 companies reporting just 4% profit growth in Q4 2024, down from 8% the year before, per FactSet. So, what happens when consumer spending collapses, businesses stop investing, and Trump's tariffs throw a Molotov cocktail into the mix? You get a recession, folks. And not just any recession, a nasty, stagflationary one, where growth stalls but prices keep rising. The Conference Board's leading economic index, a key recession predictor, has been flashing red for over a year, and Goldman Sachs now puts the odds of a recession in 2025 at 35%, up from 15% 6 months ago. So, here we are, folks, staring down the barrel of an economic train wreck, and what's the Fed doing? Waiting. What's the government doing? Making it worse. And what are we doing? Getting crushed under the weight of their incompetence. Here's the Boss Economics World prescription. First, the Fed needs to stop pretending everything's fine and start cutting rates, now. Inflation's not going back to 2% anytime soon, not with Trump's tariffs and global supply chain chaos. So, prioritize growth before the labor market collapses and consumer spending goes kaput. Second, the government needs to ditch the tariff tantrums and immigration crackdowns, because the last thing we need is more inflation and less growth. And third, we need real leadership, not excuses, not procrastination, not waiting for clarity. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a guy with a microphone, a mountain of data, and a burning desire to call out the clowns running this circus. Until next time, keep your wallets tight and your eyes open, because this economic roller coaster's about to get a whole lot bumpier. This is Boss Economics World, signing off.